Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jefe Sports Podcast. I hope you're having a fantastic day. With the football season officially over, it's time for basketball to take over the sports world. And what better time? The NBA All-Star Game is coming up Sunday, February 14th. March Madness will be here before we know it. And really, what better person to sit here and talk basketball with me than my special guest today, the lead college basketball analyst for CBS Sports, Mr. Clark, Special K Kellogg. Clark, how you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. Appreciate that introduction. And you're right. It's always at least fun for me to talk hoops. I can talk it year round, but certainly when we get into February, that's when the temperature starts to turn up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I cannot wait. It's going to be special. And Clark, I mean, what can we say about the season for those who have not really been watching basketball? It's been a pretty eventful season so far in both the NBA and college, but let's start with college first. So, I mean, I don't really know a better place to start than with the Big Ten, probably the best conference in the nation. I mean, we got 6 teams in the top 25. It's tied for the most in the country. We got Michigan, that team up north, sitting up at number 4, Ohio State at number 7, Iowa at number 8, Illinois at number 12, Wisconsin at 19, and Purdue at 24. Clark, this is special, right? I mean, I'm not just saying this, right? This is special.
No, I think it's the deepest and best conference in the country. Clearly, you could make a case for the Big 12, particularly in the middle and at the top. But the Big 10 has potentially a double-digit number of teams that could possibly be in the field of 68. You mentioned the ranked teams, but Rutgers was ranked earlier this season. Minnesota has had some significant wins and some puzzling losses as well. Indiana is right in the mix. Northwestern has improved. Nebraska is still in rebuild mode in the second year under Fred Hoiberg. So clearly top to bottom, I think the Big Ten is the best conference in the country. And the teams that are ranked have been playing some pretty good basketball all season long, particularly the Buckeyes, another road win against Iowa last night. Iowa is probably the best offensive team in the country outside of Baylor and Gonzaga. And you think about Wisconsin, rock solid, extremely experienced. And most of these teams that are faring well in the Big Ten and across the country, Jeff, are pretty much upperclassmen-laden teams. There aren't many teams that have youthful rosters that are navigating this season particularly well for a lot of reasons. Obviously, COVID has created some roadblocks and disruptions in our lives and during the season. But experienced teams that have been together are tending to rise to the top of the list so far.
Yeah. And that's evident. I mean, like you're saying, all the blue bloods that we usually see with these one and dones like Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. This is the first time since 1961 that they're not even in the top 25. Right. And so you got to have a mature team to be in it and deal with all this COVID protocols and stuff. But Clark, the Big Ten has most likely the best conference, but they also have the best player. I mean, Luka Garza. Yeah. What an unbelievable talent he is, Clark. What in his game makes him so special?
Yeah, you've watched those of us who follow college basketball have watched his development, and he's gotten progressively better. He was runner-up in most Player of the Year tallies last season, won a couple of the awards. There are multiple Player of the Year awards out there. Obi Toppin from Dayton got most of them, but I think Luka may have won 1 or 2 of those Player of the Year awards. So he came in as the prohibitive favorite to be Player of the Year this year, and he's done nothing to dissuade that or dismiss that. He's clearly, in my mind, by a pretty good gap, the Player of the Year, leads the nation in scoring. But what stands out for me about him is his relentlessness. He's not a guy who is uber athletic. He actually kind of labors and lumbers when you watch his running gait. But he's strong, he's got a nice touch, and he typically is going to outwork his opponent. And that, to me, is really his signature attribute, his relentlessness on the floor. And then he's versatile. I mean, he can step out and make the three, and he obviously is big and strong and knows how to work inside. But he's a relentless big guy with touch and some inside-outside skill, and that has him clearly at the top of the Player of the Year running.
Yeah, I agree. What I really like about him is he's fearless. Like you can
Yeah,
tell on the floor that he is the best player and he's not really afraid to be vocal about it. He's not afraid to be physical, like bang in the post. And
yeah,
so that's kind of just throwing it back to my old days. It reminds me a little bit of when I was playing. Like I tried to be that type of guy, but to see him do this and like take over the sport of college basketball, which is a shooter sport, and like you said, he's developed a jump shot. Like
yeah.
he's a really special talent. Do you think he's gonna translate well in the NBA?
That's a question. I think it's 50-50, Jeff, because at the next level, his relentlessness will serve him. He's not really a volume rebounder, and
Mhm.
he's not an out of area rebounder. So he has to be, again, because of his lack of agility and bounce, that's gonna be a challenge for him. You try to find guys that he reminds you of at the NBA level, and the only guy I can kind of think of is Nikola Jokic from
Mm,
Denver, in terms of not being super athletic, having a game that's really close to the ground. He's not near the passer that Jokic is. Um, I think his shot is comparable. He's not nearly as skilled in the low post. So I think it's 50-50 with Luka as far as being an NBA player. The attributes you talk about, though, fearlessness, and I mentioned his relentlessness, his work ethic. Um, there might be a spot for him in the right situation, but the speed of the game at the NBA level would give me just a touch of pause. But I'd give him a hard look because of those other attributes that he possesses.
yeah, I agree. And this the speed once you get up to that level is, whoo, you got to catch up.
It's unlike
Man.
anything I mean, the games are so dramatically different. And for those who only watch it from a distance, you can't realize how good the NBA guys are. You have to see that up close for a couple of weeks to recognize the jump that it is. It's much like high school to college. That's a big jump. That's a
Right.
big jump, but it's a bigger one from college to the pros because of the speed and the skill level. The NBA guys make tough shots routinely. They
Right.
don't occasionally make tough shots. They make hard shots routinely. And the speed and strength and the volume of possessions with the 24-second shot clock, the variety of coverages of pick and rolls. I mean, it's another level. I mean, high school is a college degree. College is a master's, and the NBA is a PhD or a doctorate.
Hmm. I've never heard
That
about it like that. I like that
yeah,
though. That's a good comparison.
that's a one way to analyze it when you talk about the gap and the jumps between levels.
Yeah, wow. I never thought about it like that, but that's insightful. I like that. See, this is why they pay you the big bucks to come up with analysis like that, man. That's
Hey man,
crazy.
I try to keep it real. I try to keep it on the ground where everybody can grab hold of it. Not everybody knows basketball the way those of us who have played it at the highest levels and have watched coaches do it at the highest level. There's a certain level of education and expertise and knowledge you have, and you try to help people who may not be in that same space get a feel of that level of detail when I'm commentating. So keep it simple, but try to go deep in a simple way.
Let's transition to the NBA a little bit. So again, what an eventful season it's been so far with them. I mean, with the Harden trade, Bradley
Yeah,
Beal putting up all these numbers and losing still. John
yeah,
Wall going to Houston. Russ
yeah.
also in Washington, still not really helping, but they've had COVID issues. We'll put that to the side. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the NBA season so far?
Man, I tell you, the NBA over the last 15 years or so, Jeff, has really become a year-round sport and a popular global sport. It's really, I think, right below soccer worldwide
Yeah,
in
I
terms
would
of
agree.
popularity. In
Definitely.
terms of popularity, the notoriety that the players have worldwide, the nature of the game and how entertaining and fast-paced it is, the brilliance of the stars continues to grow. LeBron, Steph, Harden, KD, Kyrie, you can Chris. I mean, you can go on, and those guys are significant personal brands
Mm-hmm.
worldwide, and so that just elevates the magnitude and popularity of the NBA. And so the game itself is really high octane now on steroids. I mean, you can't watch a game that's not 110 plus typically
Right.
because of the pace, the volume of threes, how good these guys are. So it's extremely entertaining, and it feeds into, I think, your generation, the millennials and Gen Zs, with the desire for rapid fire analysis, high octane energy, captivation. I mean, all of that is part of what the NBA is. And therefore, it's fun. It's fun to watch. I can't follow it as closely during the college season as I typically do prior to college kicking in and after college is over. That's when I really get back. But I always have an eye on what's going on. I think the Lakers are the team to beat again. I really do, with LeBron defying all the historical norms for a
Yeah.
guy of his age. He's brilliant. AD is in his prime. They've added some other pieces. The Brooklyn experiment with those guys is pretty interesting to keep an eye on, with Kyrie and KD and James Harden and the rest of those pieces. Steve Nash as the new head coach. Steph doing it with the Warriors. Him and Draymond trying to fill in the gap. And Kelly Oubre exploded here recently, and he's got tremendous upside. So that's fun to watch. The Phoenix Suns are an up-and-coming young team, tremendous star power there with Ayton and Booker. So
Mm-hmm.
there's multiple storylines across the 30-team NBA league that is captivating for those of us who follow it. So I think the NBA, all things considered, continues to um, do great things and good things on the sports landscape.
Yeah, I agree. And like you're saying, all these storylines, it's pretty incredible to watch. I mean, Harden and them, they started out a little slow, but they're starting to catch fire now. And Steve Nash, first year coach, but you can already see that his brilliance and his knowledge of the game is evident in everything they do. I mean, I was looking at the game last week when they were playing the Clippers, and towards the end of the game, there was a big coaching decision whether they're going to foul and make the Clippers shoot free throws or they're just going to let them shoot threes. And Steve elected to foul them, and they ended up winning the game. And
Yeah.
so I think that was a pivotal moment with his coaching career, showing the whole world his basketball knowledge and his playing style translate to being a coach.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. And the analytics component of that circumstance is interesting. And some coaches are committed to the foul game, up three or whatever the circumstance is. I didn't see the game, but yeah, it's really cool. And in the NBA, another element is that coaches have a lot of decisions to make. It's still a player's game, but because of the shot clock and some of the tweaks and some of the rules, 8 seconds to get it across half court. Again, the shot clock creates a lot more possessions. The average number of possessions in a college game is probably 55 to 65. In the NBA, it's probably 80 to 90 per team possessions. So therefore, you've got all kind of little intricacies that are involved, especially as you get down the stretch. How do you manage and navigate that? So yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot more on the menu list in the NBA when it comes to coaching.
Did you really go right into broadcasting, or did you ever think about becoming a college or professional coach?
No, I never gave coaching much thought, Jeff. I had to retire early from the NBA. I was drafted by the Pacers in '82 and
Mm-hmm.
had a really promising first 3 years of a career, and then had some knee issues that ultimately ended my career. So I was drafted at 21 back in 1982. And by the time I was 26, my career was over. My left knee had undergone three surgeries, one in '84, one in '85, a third one in '86. And then in August of '87, I announced my retirement from the game. My knee just couldn't take the rigors of playing in the NBA. And so I got a chance to stay in the game through broadcasting with the Pacers on radio. That's the team that drafted me, and the only team that I played for in the NBA. And so that was the beginning. I wanted to stay around the game. I had an interest in business, but because my basketball playing career was cut short, I really wasn't quite finished getting the basketball out of me. And it really was what I knew best at that time. And having a chance to carve out another career path in the game outside of coaching was really a good fit for me. I've always been a reader, a communicator, a bit of a wordsmith, somewhat of a student of the game. So those things lent themselves to me having a chance to become good at being an analyst.
Hmm.
And so when I got the chance with the Pacers, I really enjoyed it and thought I could do it well. I was rough around the edges at the beginning, as most folks are, but I got better fairly rapidly and had really good partners, on air partners, producers, and directors, and really accelerated. And before long, I was calling some games on TV for Cleveland State University. That's where I grew up in Cleveland. And so I got an opportunity to cut my teeth on television in a small local manner. And from there, the Atlantic 10 network got wind of me and did some games for them for a year or two, and then ultimately ended up at ESPN after that. And the rest is pretty much history. I've been at CBS since 97, full time. I started doing CBS stuff in 93. So I'm closing in on a 30-year relationship with CBS, and
Wow.
both lead analyst roles for games and in the studio. So I've had a phenomenal run. A lot of good people have helped me move to this point, and I've tried to do my part to represent the game and to be a good partner for the people I work with and to serve the viewers. And thanks be to God, I've been able to have a nice long run, and I still think I've got a little runway in front of me to
Oh yeah,
continue to
you're
do
not
this.
done, Clark. You're not done by any means.
You sound like my wife, man. I'm thinking about the finish line, and she's saying you got a little more room to run. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
I've actually had some knee injuries as well. I had two
Hmm.
ACL injuries, and that was in high school. And I came back from that, played 1 year of college at the University of Louisville, but my knee just kept getting aggravated, so I had to let that go, and I transferred to Ohio State. But kind of like you were saying, I wasn't done with the game yet. I still loved being around football. I still loved talking about football and just
Hmm.
every little angle of it. I just love it. I love it. Really, this pandemic was kind of a blessing in disguise for me
Hmm.
because it gave me time. I was gonna work in Indianapolis with USA Football, but that got canceled, and so I was just sitting in my house in Cincinnati, just 2 weeks straight, just thinking about, man, like, what am I gonna do next with my life? And it was a blessing that I ended up
Wow.
getting this microphone right here
Mm.
and blossoming into Jefe, blossoming into
Wow.
this sports analyst. And I really love doing this. Like
That's
this
awesome.
is the dream
That's
come true
awesome.
for me. And
I was going to ask, how did the name Jefe come to be?
it's actually a funny story. So back in my high school, I went to St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So I I was a Spanish student. I've taken Spanish for like 12 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
I walk into class my first day and my professor's like, "Mi jefe," and I was like, "Excuse me." He's like, "Jefe." He's like, "Jefe means boss. You're the boss." And
Yes,
so
that's right. Man in charge. Man in
right, and so
charge.
ever since then, it's really just stuck with me. And
Wow.
some of my good friends, one of my good friends from Clemson University, a football player. There's a movie 21 Jump Street came out about 5 years ago,
Uh huh.
and in
Uh huh.
one scene somebody's called Jefe. And so it was always a running joke between me and my friends, like, yeah, it's my friend Jefe over here, man. And so it's just been it was a running joke. But then I'm like, you know what? I actually like that name. It means boss in
Yeah.
Spanish, like
Yeah.
FA
Yeah.
Sports Podcast. So that's
There you
really where it
go.
came
There you
from.
go. Nice. There's always a story behind those kind of names. So that's interesting, man. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So Clark, let's transition a little bit to talking about 2K. So you've been a 2K broadcaster for over
Yeah.
10 years now.
Yeah.
When you were signing up for the position, did you ever envision that it would get to this worldwide game like this?
No, no idea. Actually, it was interesting. I really believe I was a second choice initially to be one of the commentators for the game. I had done some work with 2K way back in the uh, kind of historic days and the more antiquated days before technology had really moved to where it is now, and had done some video game recording before the games got to be as fun and playable and as advanced as they are. So they knew that I had done that kind of work. But I think when I first connected with the NBA 2K property, there was some recording that needed to be done in the late spring of, I want to say, maybe 2008. And initially, Doug Collins was one of the lead analysts for NBA basketball on Turner. And I think they had reached out to Doug in an effort to have the authenticity of an NBA announcer on the game. And he wasn't available for whatever reason. And because they had history with me from way back, and I had a pretty strong reputation at that point in the business as a commentator. And I had done Indiana Pacers television for, at that point, I started Pacers television in 1989. So I was still doing Pacer games until 2011. So I was doing NBA games in addition to my full slate of college games. So I did have NBA pedigree as a player and as a commentator. So they reached out to me. My agents called me because I said, would you be interested in this? And I said, sure. It was my off season other than the Pacers playoffs, so I could work around it. And so there you go. And they were thrilled with Kevin Harlan and I. And then Steve Kerr joined us before he became a coach, Greg Anthony, and then the roster of commentators has just continued to expand with the growth and popularity of the game. But early on, it was primarily Kevin and I, and then the third person, and then they've added sideline reporters and studio folks and all of that. But I've been there from kind of the beginning of that um, evolution, and they've been happy with my work. I enjoy it. It's fun. It connects me to the NBA and to the gamers across the world in a way that's quite unique. But I never anticipated it or saw it coming in the way that it has, Jeff. And it's funny. I'll be in an airport sometimes, and I'll be standing in the line at a store, and I might say something, and the people in front of me will turn around and say, "Hey, I just heard you last night. My sons were playing NBA 2K." And it's weird, but it happens to me multiple times as I'm traveling during the year. People won't even see my face, but they'll hear me and they'll say, "I know that voice. I know that voice."
Yeah,
And
you got a very
it's actually
distinct
pretty
voice.
cool, man. It's been quite a run, and I'm grateful for it.
Just knowing what you are to the younger generation, like, I mean, every single day I'd go home and play 2K. And I know I'm not alone. It's almost like we grew up with you. Like, do you ever have those thoughts like, man, like I'm probably some kid's hero
No,
much?
I never think of it in that way. But my youngest son, we've got three children. Our daughter's almost 34, and our boys are 31 and 29. So all of them played Division One sports. And Nick, our youngest, graduated from OU in 2014. So he would often tell me times that he would be in his dorm room or in the hallway walking down the hall, and he would hear my voice coming out of dorm rooms because the folks in there were playing NBA 2K. And that's when it started to kind of register that this thing. And then the other experience I had, Jeff, I went with the Pacers back in October of 2013 to the global games in Manila, Philippines, and Taipei, Taiwan. Every year, the NBA has some trip with a couple of teams, and they play exhibition games, part of the global branding of the league. And so the Pacers and the Houston Rockets went to these places to play a couple of exhibition games. So I was there in my role at that time, working in player development with the Pacers. So I traveled to be there as a liaison with the Pacers. And I went through the concourse at one of the games they were playing, and there were consoles of NBA 2K. And in the Philippines, they were in English. So people could go out there and play the game. And I went and just kind of was a fly on the wall, and I heard my commentary all the way in the Philippines. I'm like, come on, man, this is crazy. So that's when it kind of hit me that this thing is pretty broad. Then I went to visit Nick when he was playing in Poland, and a couple of people brought copies
of their NBA 2K game for me to sign because they got wind that I was there. And I signed a couple of NBA 2K games in Poland.
Oh my
So that to
God.
me was crazy. Just
That's so
absolutely
crazy.
crazy.
That is so crazy. Let's talk about something else that's really one of a kind. I mean, Clark, you got to play POTUS ball with President Obama. Now, for those unfamiliar with POTUS ball, that's like equivalent of pig or horse, but when you're the president of the United States, you play POTUS ball. Clark, tell me about that once in a lifetime experience.
Man, it's one of the highlights that I've had a chance to enjoy and experience through basketball, Jeff. Obviously, President Barack Obama being the first Black president in our country's history is in and of itself monumental. And to witness that and to see that is a great memory. And the way he handled himself in office, you can agree or disagree with ideology and policies and the like, but in terms of the dignity, the equanimity, the poise, the care for people that was displayed by he and the First Lady is something that should make all Americans proud. And to have a chance to interact with the sitting president through a shared love of basketball is quite mind blowing when you think about it. That he would be comfortable enough with himself to engage in a little bit of that type of theater, which actually ended up being a game that he won fair and square after I had him down a few letters. But it's still one of the great highlights and memories for me, and will be for my lifetime, because it was just special. It was unique. We share the same age. We're in the same age group. He's got a dear friend that's a Columbus native who I also know. I think that helped lay the groundwork. Being a fan of basketball, he was familiar with my career and what I was doing as a broadcaster. And before the POTUS game, he actually joined Vern Lundquist and I in Washington, D.C. as a guest commentator during a game that we were televising on CBS. That was the winter of 2009. And then in the spring of 2010, right before the tournament started, is when we had the POTUS game. And it was just a wonderful opportunity, man. Great memory. And while I do regret that I came up short in the game, I think it probably ended the way it should have for him to have a moment like that he could brag about and hold over me for all of his days. And I can deal with that. I mean, I can deal. He won fair and square. I didn't put the clamps down when I had him down, so that's on me. But still, I get great smiles. I got some wonderful pictures that were taken at that engagement, and he signed a couple of them for me. So it just warms my heart.
Clark, did you ever think that you would gain this popularity and be this global star back when you were just a kid in Cleveland, Ohio, just dribbling a ball on your driveway?
No, no doubt. No expectation of that. You know, for me, Jeff, I loved the game, fell in love with it early. My dad was a really good athlete, never got to the highest level of pro sports, but was really accomplished in his own right. So I was exposed to sports early, fell in love with hoops, and early on thought I had a chance to do something decent in the game and have a chance to play in the pros. And every level that I got to, I was really just interested in trying to be the best I could be and excelling. And then if there was notoriety that came as a result of that, I would handle it. But I wasn't in quest of being a star. I wanted to be good, and I wanted to do good, not just in my sport, but in my life. And I had a lot of people that kind of fed that desire and kind of planted those seeds in me, starting with my mom and dad, extended family, teachers and coaches. So I always wanted to be somebody that made them proud. And so early on, I kind of focused through basketball on trying to excel. And so that was always my drive and motivation. I want to be good. I want to be as good as I can. I like to compete. I want to win. I want to be able to represent my family well and be somebody that is making a lasting impact through doing good. And so if popularity or celebrity is attached to that, then I have to deal with it. But that wasn't the desire or drive. I wanted to be good. And if being good meant people might know your name, then I'd be okay with that.
Clark, I feel like that's kind of a lost art form in this day and age. Young people just want to get fame however way they can, the fastest way they can. And I feel like really your style of just staying down, grinding, and just working hard is a lost art form. So do you have any advice for how kids can really put down the phone, put down social media, and just focus on themselves and getting better in their own life?
Well, so much of my worldview and perspective is anchored in my relationship with God through faith in Christ. And, there's a passage in the Bible that says that those who excel in their work will perform before kings, or their gift will move them forward. And so when you have giftedness in whatever area it is, I think it's our responsibility to try to steward our gifts, our abilities, and to really try to maximize what those are for not just our own good, but for the good of others. And when you do that, then you don't have to search for recognition. You don't have to search for fame. It will find you if it's so in your future. But a fulfilling life is not about fame and notoriety. It's really about using what God's given you to the best of your ability for the good of others.
Amen.
And when you do that, there's fulfillment and there's satisfaction, there's influence, and there's joy. Now, that's not to say it's going to always be easy or smooth. I mean, most things worth having or gaining are going to cost you something. They're going to cost you. There's a cost involved in maximizing your gifts and recognizing your potential. Sometimes you have to put things down to take up things that'll move you forward. Sometimes you got to go through extreme challenge and difficulty, loss and heartbreak to be able to move forward. But searching and reaching for fame is a futile exercise because fame is fleeting. There's another passage in the Bible that says, all men are like grass, and their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall away, but the word of the Lord stands forever. What your influence and impact is will stand and live through other people that you touch. You will eventually fade and fall away. Me, you, and others. But how we impact and influence others, how we utilize our gifts for the good of others, that will live on. So that's what you want to really target. We call them, they're called in a book that I read called The Road to Character, they're called the eulogy virtues. The eulogy virtues, the things that people feel and say about you when you're gone, the things that have impacted them because of you. Those will last. They will live on through the lives of others, through the stories they tell. What you accumulate, trophies, money, property, material things, those things eventually will fall away. So I think it's important for all folks, young folks particularly, to embrace your gifts. Be willing to recognize what your gifts are. Pursue your dreams. Have dreams, but don't anchor your satisfaction and fulfillment on fame or on something that's unstable and fleeting. Anchor your pursuit on those things that will last, relationships, influence. Those types of things have more significance than what level of popularity or how many followers you have on Twitter or Instagram or how many likes you get. I know it's a tough thing to navigate when you're young, but the sooner you can start to focus on that which is lasting, the better chance you have to navigate well life as it comes at you. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the phones and social media are really productive. They can be extremely productive and positive. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, there are some things that are extremely positive. It's empowering to be able to have your voice heard, to galvanize with other folks for good causes. But there's also a lot of noise that can be detrimental and unproductive. And you have to be willing to choose the narrower, firmer path than the one that's all about fame and perceived fortune.
I don't know, Clark. Like I've seen so many of my friends and so many just people around me like get so sucked into this world of social media, looking the best and just focusing on all the wrong things. It's really been just it's been an experience that's made me distance myself from them and really just like put everything down, focus on what I want to do in life. And like I keep saying, like this pandemic was a blessing in disguise for me because I was going down all the wrong paths and really just trying to make it doing whatever possible. But like this pandemic has really just allowed me to sit here and focus, get closer to God.
Yeah.
I pray every single day and just get on the right path in life. And it's been amazing.
No, that's exciting. And your example and your voice is critical to your peers. It really is. It's really important that your voice and your example be one that you stay consistent with, because you know how much of an influence peers have with peers. I'm no different. There are a number of peers that I have that influence me to reach higher and to continue to stay focused on the things that are most important. My wife, our children, friends that we have, pastors and ministers that encourage me in my faith walk. So once we have a chance to set our sights on where it is we like to go and who it is we'd like to be, then it's in us to put people and experiences in our path that give us a chance to walk that out, because we can't do it solo.
Yeah.
Nobody can do it solo. We all need other folks, and being aware of that and committed to that is important. And then being willing to use your unique experiences and voices as you journey through seeking to be an example, living a fulfilled life, maximizing your gifts, having a positive influence where you are. Those things aren't to be taken lightly, and it's a daily discipline and quest to be about what you want to see in your space and in the world. So yeah, I applaud you for that, man.
Yeah.
And sometimes things that force us to reset, whether it's the end of a playing career or it's injuries or loss of loved ones or a pandemic, I believe nothing in life is wasted. It's really about how you use what you encounter and how you grow through it and are changed by it for the good. And so that's good to hear that this has been kind of a pivoting time. And I'm sure many other folks feel the same way in this unstable, very difficult, challenging time with coronavirus.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely right. So just one last question before we wrap this up. So I have a segment on my show called Stay Wavy, where I ask my guests to give me a specific time in their life where they were in a bad circumstance, like their back was against the wall, and somehow, some way they got through it and got to the better side, like kind of like what we're talking about. So I'm going to ask you, do you have a specific story of maybe a time in your playing career? Maybe it was a time where you had to retire, where you weren't really sure what you were going to do next in your life, but somehow, some way you got through it and you ended up being successful.
Man, I tell you, I've had a pretty charmed journey. Not perfect, but not a ton of significant roadblocks. Uh, some difficulties, some gut shots, um, losing my mom suddenly when she was only 53 due to some complications from surgery. Uh, we were on a vacation, my wife and I, and got a call that she had had surgery and things had taken a turn for the worse. And before I could even get home, I called my dad and was at the airport trying to get home, and she was gone. And that rocked me pretty hard. I was 10 years married at the time, so my wife and I were close. And our kids were young, but that was tough. And then the whole retirement piece, promising career. I was just beginning to learn how to be a leader, what kind of work I would have to do to help us as a Pacers team be winning and playoff competitive. We never got to that point. We were at the bottom of the barrel my first couple of years because the franchise just didn't have the talent, and questions about, there were a number of dynamics there. So I never got a chance to play on a winning team in the NBA. I actually covered Reggie Miller and those great Pacer teams as a broadcaster. But so having to retire at 26 after I put so much time and energy into realizing that dream. But I had given my life to God through Christ in November of '86 and retired, 9 months later in August. So I didn't know exactly what my future held, Jeff, but I knew that God was in control of my future through that new relationship. So that's where I actually got anchored more and more in my faith, and the uncertainty of what was next wasn't quite as scary as it might have been. And then immediately within a month of retiring, I kind of knew what my next step was. I was going to be doing Pacers game on radio, Pacers games, and trying to carve out a new path. So I was able to throw myself into that. But those are a couple of challenges. And then you have family dynamics where you want to help folks that are struggling and it doesn't quite work out. And you realize that you have some limitations in what you can do for other people in regards to their own life and choices. And that's always hard when you have to let go and let grown folks make their decisions and deal with the consequences of it. But by and large, probably I would say my premature retirement was probably the hardest. Personally, losing my mom when I did was difficult too. But then I thought about, heck, I had her until I was 33. I had her that long. So yeah, but and it's my faith. I've been a believer. I've been a Christian since November of 1986. So that's well over half my life.
Yeah.
So that's been my anchor whenever there are tough times that rock me and shake my confidence or scare me, that I hold to the truth of God's word. I'm here with you, never will leave you, nor forsake you. Keep tethered to me and we'll find our way to the other side. So my faith has really been the constant anchor for me in times good and difficult.
Amen. Amen. People out there, if you guys are going through something, you're struggling with anything, the first thing you should do is just pray. Get on your knees and pray. And just if you guys think about it, everybody in the world has their own agenda, but God is always there for you. And
Amen.
Most times it's going to be just you and God. So just take the time to talk to him, and he will always be there for you. He will always propel you in whatever you need to do in your life. So just side note, you guys, if you guys are going through something, hit me up, let me know, or just take it up with God and let you guys talk out some things. But Clark, before we let you go, I got to get your opinion on this. You played in the 80s. You're witnessing what we're seeing right now in the NBA. Who is the greatest basketball player of all time?
Man, this is one I get fairly often, and it's a relevant question because of the greatness of LeBron James, and obviously Michael Jordan has got a special place on the Mount Rushmore of former players. My guy growing up was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was my guy. That's who I'm riding and dying with if I have to. So he would be my first choice. MJ is, it's 1A, 1B for me. And I go with Kareem. And then I'm torn between MJ and LeBron, but I'm a Northeastern Ohio guy. Grew up in Cleveland. LeBron's Northeastern Ohio, growing up in Akron. He's a little bigger than MJ. And my late dad would always say, good big takes down good little. So I'm leaning with LeBron just on the size factor. I know he doesn't have the number of rings and so forth. And I know a lot of my peers and other basketball followers are riding and dying with MJ, and I ain't mad at them. I don't have a problem with that. But for me, I'm going the captain, Kareem, and then I'm going LeBron, and MJ would be right there in that on deck circle number 3.
Not bad. Special K, not bad. Man.
Yeah.
I got to put LeBron at number 1.
Yeah. And who would you go to?
2, just based off hearing what my dad said and seeing really what was going on with the Last Dance documentary, I'll give it to MJ.
Yeah.
And 3rd, I'm a big Kobe fan, but I gotta put Big O, Oscar Robertson.
Yeah. He'd be on my he was right there too, man. Big O. My dad was a huge Big O because that's the guy they saw. And all of these guys that you mentioned were different than anybody else we had seen. That's the greatness that you look at. They're unique for their time, and their uniqueness is timeless. When you talk about greatness, Jim Brown falls into that category.
Oh my God.
I think Bird does to a degree. Those guys were special and unique in what they did and how they did it. And that obviously puts them all in the Hall of Fame, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's where it starts. You got to be a Hall of Famer to make any of these top lists.
That's true. So Chuck's out. Automatically Chuck's out.
No, that dude was tough. He's tough. One of the all-time greats for sure.
Yeah, my dad would always tell me, like, since I was like a little undersized, and when I got to the end of my basketball career, my dad would just be like, Jeff, Charles Barkley was 6'4", out there getting rebounds with 7-footers. That's what you got to do.
Absolute monster, man. And terrific guy. But I played against him and MJ. They came a couple years behind me, so I only played against them a few times before I had to retire. But I knew Barkley was going to be special because he showed his tenacity, his unique rebounding ability, his force, all of that. So yeah, he just didn't get a championship, but he's a championship caliber player for sure. He just never won the final trophy, you know.
For sure. Oh my goodness. Well, Clark, we're going on about an hour now. I just want to give thanks to you, man. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Thank you for giving advice to the younger generations. And thank you just for everything that you do with 2K, with your CBS analysis, everything that you do for the sport of basketball, Clark. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Jeff, Jefe. Enjoyed it, man. It was great to hang out with you.